Welcome everybody to our third webinar of the year. And today we are going to be covering a much asked for facility within Qlik Sense, and that's the ability to write back to a dashboard. And I shall leave my colleague to give you a bit more detail on that. Today's presenters, myself, Neil Thorne, I'm Head of Origination at Ometis, and I'm very pleased to welcome Simon Kirby, who is Enterprise Solutions Director at Inphinity. So yeah, welcome Simon.
Excellent, thank you, Neil.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good to have you here. So I'm going to just do some brief introductions, and then I will hand over to Simon to do some positioning and the demonstration itself. Usual way of doing these things for us, we'll have a Q&A at the end, but please, if you've got questions as we're going along, put them in the Q&A facility within Teams, and if they are sort of appropriate for the state of the discussion at that time, I'll interrupt Simon and we'll ask it. If I think it will interrupt the flow a bit too much, then we'll leave them towards the end. But yeah, please treat this as an interactive session. Now, we have one or two on the call, not too many today, but there are still one or two who aren't aware of Ometis. So thank you for joining. But just to explain who we are an elite partner for Qlik. Last year we were the #1 partner in the UK, which is a big testament to several of my colleagues on the call here today as well. We are dedicated to the Qlik platform, and we go all the way across it from the data integration side all the way through to analytics. Just over 25 staff and customers across all different industries, and we offer a full range of services alongside the Qlik platform. So you can see what I've put up there: consultancy, development work, if you want to give us a piece of work that perhaps you can't handle yourselves. We have a UK dedicated support desk where you can actually chat to somebody and get your questions answered. And we also have an education and learning facility whereby we offer training courses online, but with a trainer present. So please check our website for more information on that. So I always bring this slide up at the start of these presentations just so that you can understand the whole breadth of the platform and where the bit fits that we're talking about today. So you heard me talk earlier about data integration and quality. So this is bringing your data from wherever it may be, putting governing functionality across it, applying quality to it, maybe even passing it into cloud data warehouses like Snowflake, Databricks, Azure Synapse, these sorts of products. But where we're going to focus today is in the analytics side. So you may recall, those who were with us last time, we covered AutoML and predictive analytics. This that we're talking about today probably covers across a wide range of that section of the platform. So I will leave Simon to explain exactly where it fits. And then Q&A, so that's at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Simon. By the way, the webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out a link to the recording a little later in the week. So if you need to share it with colleagues, please do. Over to you, Simon.
Great stuff. Thank you, Neil. Much appreciated. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Simon Kirby. I've been in the Qlik ecosystem now for probably about 8 years. Working with Ometis, alongside Ometis for a number of those years. Actually, I used to work for Qlik. I was with them for 7 years, and I joined Inphinity around about this time last year. I think I'm just going to add something. I've been working with the guys from Ometis. I can't remember almost all of that time, Neil. Right? And yeah, you can't find a more knowledgeable and friendly bunch of people to work with you on your Qlik platform. It's been a pleasure and honor to know you and work with you for all of that time, guys. And yeah, hopefully look forward to many more years to work with you as well. So just, it was great coming up to Birmingham last year when you ran one of the Qlik World Tour events up there, which was great. Yeah, and look forward to doing that hopefully again this year if you do another one. Fingers crossed. If you'll have me, if you'll have me.
Certainly will. No, thank you very much
Great
for that.
stuff. Thanks, Neil. Good. Is it okay if I share my screen? I'll
Of course.
take over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So let me do this, and what we'll do is I'm going to just share with you one slide, just a positioning slide, a little bit about us, Inphinity, and then we'll dive straight into the product. I'm not a huge fan of PowerPoint, those of you that know me. So what is Inphinity? Who are Inphinity? So we are actually a technology company that makes technology just for Qlik Sense. Just for those of you that use Qlik View, I'm afraid the products that we've got just work on Qlik Sense. So we've been around for about, this is 5 years, it's nearly 6 now to be fair, and we're actually a spin-off from a company based in Europe called eMark, and eMark actually are like the master reseller for Qlik in 3 countries, in Slovakia, Hungary and the Czech Republic. And then around about 6 years ago, the customers in that region were saying we really want to be able to do certain things. So we began to create some technology that actually works on top of Qlik, and actually one of the products we've got here is a connector, which we'll touch on very briefly. So just the 3 products that we've got Inphinity Forms, which is what this webinar will concentrate on, which is the writeback capability. We've also got Inphinity Flow, which is a more traditional extension of Qlik Sense and allows you to build flow charts and organizational charts. We're planning to do another webinar later this year about Inphinity Flow. So I'm only going to mention it briefly, but we'll talk more about that in a future event. And then the third one is a connector called Inphinity Mole. Again, we're going to run another event about that one in the future, but basically that reads text-based documents, structures those documents, and then lets you load those into Qlik Sense, into the Qlik Sense data model. But we're going to concentrate on forms today, and we're going to dive into there. So I'm just going to jump across to my demo site. If I go to here, there we are. Neil, is that coming through? Can you see that all right?
It is. Yeah, it's perfect.
Great stuff. Good. All right, so I'm going to be working through a couple of demos to kind of give you an idea of the Forms product, how it works, what you can do with it, that kind of thing. This is our demo site. We've got 36 different demos in here of how you can use our different products. Most of them have forms in there in some form or another, but I'm just going to concentrate this morning on just 3 of those, so we'll dive into those. We're about to actually redesign this to give it a fresh new look and feel. I saw a wireframe of that last week. It looks really nice. So watch this space. This demo site will be up to date quite soon, or be updated quite soon. So let's dive into a little bit more about Inphinity Forms. So first of all, if you wanted to enter data into a Qlik Sense dashboard or a Qlik Sense app, it's really tricky. You may have seen a video produced by Mike Turalo from Qlik a few months ago about how you could use Qlik application automation to actually build a data entry tool to let you enter data. I think I counted, it was something like 14 or 15 steps that you need to go through to build out something like that. And even then, it wouldn't allow you to do something like this, which you see on the screen, which is essentially a table where you can put in data in a row, in a record like this. So Qlik can help you do data entry into Qlik Sense, but it's a little bit clunky, maybe a little bit immature. So we've been doing this for about 6 years, as I mentioned. So if you're interested in forms, what we do is we give you 4 different types of form. So I'll start with explaining what those 4 different types of form are, and then we'll kind of look at some of the things that you can do with each of those forms, and then we'll look at some use cases. As Neil mentioned, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A area, and definitely we can kind of ask them as we go through, or we can answer them at the end in the Q&A. All right. So let's start with these 4 different types of forms. So first one, this one here that you're looking at is, we call this Inphinity Forms General. It's actually the tabular view of a form. So essentially, I'm just going to make this bigger so you can see you've got the form and some of the information we pull directly in from the Qlik Sense data model. So you can pull in dimensions, you can also pull in measures. But what happens is they basically concatenate together to form a key to make a unique key for this record. You can, if you want to, define your own key, or it will use the dimensions that it pulls in to create that key. Then what we can do is we can start to add in some fields that you can enter data into. So this one here is a text field. So you can see we've got business analyst, and I could enter in some extra letters, characters in there. We've got some numbers. This is a numeric field. So we've got the expected salary in here, the city, for example, again, another text field. This one is interesting because you can actually upload files into a form. As you can see, we've uploaded them here. So if you click on this, you can actually choose the files that you want to pull in. So these are CVs. We're working with a human resources app here. So these are CVs that you could pull in if you want to. You can pull in any kind of file, a document, a PDF, an XLS, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. This is a traffic light symbol, which essentially you can change from red to amber to green and to white and back to red again. So it lets you kind of see the status if you want to. We've got some more information here. We've got some notes. Now, all of this information is held in one row, represents one record. And you can see that you've got the changed by. This is actually my, if you like, my unique identifier when I log into our demo site. But you can also see the date. If we wanted to, we could add new rows by clicking on the new row button. If you want to, you can delete records by clicking on the delete row button. And if you wanted to, you can amend, as you say, as I said, you can amend these. So this is the first form. This is the tabular view. We call this Inphinity Forms General, okay? So that's the first one. The second one, I'm just going to go to a different sheet. We'll go to our talent management sheet here. That's fine. And I'm just going to select one employee. We'll select Anne Keaton. Now, this form here in the middle, we call this the single record form. Okay, so instead of seeing one record in a row in a table, this is now a more top-down view of a form. So if you're familiar with things like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, or forms that let you make surveys, this is the kind of thing that you might expect to see, where you have your data top to bottom. We've got sections in here, so we can open them up and see like the technical skills. This is a gauge, so we can literally just move it, from left to right to and so on. We can also see another section where we can see languages. Some of these actually let you have drop-down lists, so you can be very specific about what people enter. We can also restrict what people enter. We can have some validation rules in here if we wish. So this is the single record view. This is the, this is the second type of form that we've got. The third one is this one here on the right-hand side. This is one that we call Inphinity Forms Specific. We call it specific because actually what it lets you do is we actually expose the underlying APIs of the Inphinity Forms to you with this one. So if you wanted to, if you're a Qlik developer, you can actually take this form and you can customize it to your heart's content. You can have sections, you can have columns, you can have top and bottom, you can have all kinds of features and functions in here if you want to. That does require good knowledge of things like JavaScript, CSS, HTML5, those kinds of things, but you can do it if you want to. Out of the box with this form, we also give you something called the dimension note. And this is an example of the dimension note. So here we can enter in some long form text if we wanted to. And then once we've entered that, we can just hit save. I won't because I don't really want to mess it up. But we can add some formatting, we can add bulleted lists and so on. Okay, so those are the three forms that let you actually enter data. You've got the table view, the single record view, and then this long commentary view. If we change from Anne Keaton, to say Alex, you'll see that, it's asking me to save something else. We'll take Anne off of there, and you'll see that no one has entered anything for Alex. If we were to change this to Bob, then we'll see again, sorry, we'll take that off there. And then you'll see we've got, again, nothing has been in here for Bob. But the point is, if you were to add something in, let me just add in some random text, hit save. Once you save that, it's automatically there visible for the next time you come back. So we switch from there to Alex, and then what we'll do is we'll go back to Bob again. The information that I entered has been stored. All right. So those are the three main forms. What we're also going to do is go back to this sheet here and talk about the fourth one. If any of you use Qlik Cloud, you might be familiar with something called Qlik Sense Notes. So you'll see there's a button up here on the left-hand side, and if you click it on the left-hand side, a panel pops up, and you can enter in some notes, and you can have a discussion with your colleagues about things that you see in Qlik Sense. We do that as well. We call this Inphinity Forms comments, and we have this appear down here. You can put it anywhere, just like you would in any other sheet object. But if I click this, what you'll see is we can then add commentary. So if I add a new comment, I can say Ometis webinar. I could then highlight that, make it bold. I can add a snapshot if I wanted to add a snapshot to this. So if you've taken a picture of something, you can embed that in here if you want to. So we can say save. And also it's capturing selections. So what I could do, I didn't, when I made the note, I didn't capture selections, but I could have done. And what it would then do, oh no, I'm sorry, I did, because Bob Park is actually applied as a selection. So you can see that there. So let's just do this. If I remove Bob as a filter, we'll go back into here. We'll look at the one that I just made. And then what we can do is apply selections. That will then apply that filter. And then it will, so you can have a commentary about the things that you see on the sheet, and then you can actually analyze the sheet, or you can analyze individual objects like this particular map object here. If I just hover over that, you'll see this little icon that says comment. We can pop that up, and we can then make comments about this particular object. So there's no comments in here yet. No one's added anything, but you could if you wanted to. So those are the 4 types of form. As I said, there are lots of different things that you can do with them. So there's a couple of other things that are worth mentioning in here. You can embed a single record form within a table view, right? So this one here, like this, can open that, and we can see the single record form that's actually within the forms general. Now, if I cancel this, you'll see that at the moment we're looking at the number of employees and the amount of people that can be hired. Those are the only 2 entry fields in this view. But if I click the single record view, we can also see we've got note. So we could add something in here. So the way this works is we're actually embedding a form within a form. Okay. And to give you an example of what you can do with that, if I go to this different demo, I'll just refresh this. Neil, can I just check that you can still hear and see me? Just to make sure that everything's all right.
All fine. Yep.
Good, good. So this is an example of a workflow approval process, if you like. So imagine you've uploaded some documents into this app. We've got some invoices here. Okay, so if we just take a look at this invoice, we'll open that up, and then we'll look at that by opening this. So you see this is actually an invoice. So if we go back, what we can then do is say, right, we need people in the company to review the invoice. It could be a contract, it could be an insurance policy, it could be some banking details, whatever it might be. We need to review this. All right. So if we click on this facts button, it will pop up a different form, and this particular team will actually go through and do a fact checking of that particular document. So once they've done that, they hit the progress icon and make that go green, and then say confirm. When they've done that, this little green tick box will be ticked. The finance team can then do their review, different form, different set of criteria. Again, once they're happy, they select green. The legal team can do their review. They've not yet finished it, or they're not happy with it because they left it either as amber or red, and that marks the red flag. Then the manager can come along and say, I need to do my review of all of them. Am I happy? Yes or no? And then, of course, if you want to see the change log of all of the changes that happened to that particular invoice, you can see all of those throughout time and who did those reviews. All right. So that's one of the nice things that you could do. On the left-hand side here, you're actually seeing an Infinity Flow object, which is actually showing us where in the process we are, because this is a process flow. We can say, yes, the new invoice is received. It's been fact checked, it's been finance checked, it's been had a legal check, and the manager's approved, yes or no. All right. So you can see that. If I take that one off, we'll look at a different one that hasn't gone through all of those steps. Number 3, you'll see then, actually it's saying it's reviewed. I think that's because the managers made their decisions. So there we go. So those are some of the key points. So Neil, I'm just going to stop briefly there for a moment. Have we had any questions come in?
We haven't yet. No, not so far. Not in the
No
chat.
problem.
I did have one. I've got one or two people who weren't able to attend who've
Mm,
asked if I could put in their question. So what
sure.
one of them is I'm dropping you in it on the tech side. So does it write to a SQL table? Where does it store that data?
Great question. Yes, it does. It can write to SQL databases. If I just quickly jump into this documentation site, so this is the forms documentation, and in here, this is an architecture page, and this shows actually how you can deploy Infinity Forms. So what we've got in here, you can deploy it in an on-premise environment. Call this client managed. So essentially your managed instance of Qlik Sense. So you can deploy there. You can deploy on Qlik Cloud. We call this a full SaaS deployment. And then you can do a hybrid of the two. And you can actually have it where you can actually combine both environments together. In terms of where you write back to, just to answer that particular question, Neil,
Yeah.
the way this works is if you this box here on the right hand side represents your Qlik Sense server. So client managed Qlik Sense on premise. All right. So this box is that. You've got your Qlik engine, you've got your Qlik apps running on your Qlik engine, and then of course the Forms extension runs and talks to the Qlik app. All right. And then what happens is there's the Infinity service runs on the Windows server, the same Windows server that you'd run Qlik Sense on. Okay. So the blue box represents that service running, and then you've got some configuration files. And this is where we get to where do we write the data into? So getting to the point. So you can either write to files, and that can be XML or QED, and those would be stored on the Windows server, the same Windows server for your Qlik Sense environment, or it could be somewhere else. If you choose to actually write them somewhere else, you just need to change a small file so that Forms service knows where to look and where to store the data. Okay.
Okay.
And the nice thing is writing to QVD, because we're actually using Qlik, essentially it's a combination of kind of like the store command where you actually write things back plus some other things that we add into that to write into QVD. Once you've created these files, of course, they're just another data table, and you can then load those. You see the arrows going back into the engine. You can load those tables back in. And in a minute, we'll talk a little bit about the use cases around that. So why would you want to reload the data that you've written back into Qlik Sense? What's the point? We'll come to that in a moment, okay? The other one is an SQL database, and we support a large number of SQL databases. So you've got the traditional ones like Oracle, SQL Server, then you've got PostgreSQL, MySQL. You can also write back directly to Snowflake, Redshift, and there are others that we're working on as well. All right, so there's a wide range of SQL databases that you can write to. So does that answer the question, Neil?
It does, yeah. That
Yeah,
was yeah. I'll
good,
get back
good.
to them on that one. We have got another one that's just come into the chat,
Hmm.
which is from Sharma, and he says, if multiple users are using a write-back at the same point of time, will both the users use the write-back, save their updates on the same row ID, or will it lock one user to wait until the other has completed updating?
Okay, that is a great question. All right, so let's go into this form here. So at the moment, you see this little icon, the green icon, person icon, that shows me as being using this form. All right. If I duplicate this tab, so effectively I'm going to pretend to be two different users, what you'll see is you'll then see two icons when this renders. So you'll now see two icons, essentially me and me.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Yeah, and what you'll see is when you hover over there, you can see the names of the different users. So yesterday I was actually talking to a
Nice.
customer about one of their forms, and they actually had 8 concurrent users at the same time. You'd see 5 icons, but you'd see 8 names. Obviously, we don't want to put in there like 50 icons that are going along the screen, so we stop at 5. But if you hover, you'll see the names of the users that are using it. So in this one, let's say I want to change this to from not yet needed to not yet needed today. Okay, so I'll enter that. So what happens is you'll see a few things happen. This little black dot appears, which tells me I've made a change to that field. These buttons then highlight, they become red. So this means I can save it, or if I don't like what I've entered, I can clear what I've just entered. All right. If I go to this other tab, now going to pretend to be you, Neil. All right. So I'm going to go to here. I've gone over. Now you can see if I hover over this, it's locked. So that record is locked because the other person, the other me, is actually using that record. This record locking is really important. So when one user is locking a record, they've then got the rights to hit save. When they do hit save, then that will instantly become unlocked, and then another user can write into that field if they want to. So this is row level locking, because you'll see along here it's also locked the whole row. I can't make changes to any other field. So we're locking the record, the whole record. All right, it's a really good point. If I can, of course, make changes to other records, that's not a problem. And when we hit save, it writes back either to the file or to the SQL database.
Yeah.
Just a quick point about that. If you're writing to QVD or XML, what we do is we actually create a new version of the record. We do not overwrite the old one, but Forms is configured to only show the most latest version of the record. Now that's good because you keep a full history of everything that's ever been written into the file. The flip side of that is that these files can get pretty big, but we do allow you to create to manage that. We've got some tools that we give you, these tools to let you look after, say, I only want the last 2 versions of a record, or I only want the last 1 month of these records, or so on, right? So we give you some tools to, of course, manage that. And then, of course, anything older than that, you can archive out to like an archive QVD or something like that. All right. So hopefully that answers the question in terms of the governance around multiple users working on the same thing at the same time. We've been doing this, as I said, for 5 or 6 years. And about 2 months ago, I asked my colleagues in support, have we ever had a support case about data corruption due to data being entered and some conflicts occurring? And they went back and checked, and we've never had a support case like that ever. So it must work. So this works really well as far as I can tell. So, all right.
That's good. Yeah, I'm just thinking of people I've spoken to this about. So we talk a lot about sort of sales planning, budget planning, that sort of thing, where,
Yeah.
people are maybe, I don't know, typing in something at the top level and they want to cascade it down. So it could be, I'm going to sell products of this amount, I'm going to do that much in a month, but please try and spread it out amongst maybe last year's numbers or quantities or whatever. Can you do that sort of thing in here?
That's another really good question, actually, and was kind of prepared for that one, because I would say that 80%, 4 out of every 5 conversations we have with customers or prospective customers are to do with some form of planning. And
Right.
it comes in lots of shapes and forms and sizes and so on, but normally some form of planning. So we're talking about budgeting, forecasting, predicting what might happen next, and so on. So yeah, I was talking to a customer just last week, and what they have is a really nice Qlik Sense app with Infinity in it. And what they do is they look back over the previous 9 months, the sales per branch for the previous 9 months. And then what they do is they then predict the sales for the next 3. So they have the data pulled in from the data model that's been saved for the previous 9. And then they've got Inphinity Forms fields for the next 3 months in the future. And each of
Right.
the branch managers enters into that what they can do. Now, that's a very simple linear planning form. They actually do it on a by project basis, actually. So there are 40 branches or so, and each branch has multiple projects going on at any given time. So the actual table that they've got has got something like 7,000 records in it, which is pretty big. But it's a really nice way of being able to do this kind of like forward-looking rolling 12 months, where you can like roll forward a month and then you drop the previous one that was 9 months ago, and so on. That's something you can do. This particular demo, very simple example. I'll show you how you might do some simple planning in here. So this is looking at some budgeting. So what you're trying to say is, we expect in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 to sell X amount of products, and it's going to be at the following values.
Yeah.
What you can do is you can create, like you would in Excel, an auto calculate field, right? So this 693552 is the auto calculate of these four values. So if I change the 500,000 to 1.5 million, I want you just to watch the 693552. So I'll enter that one and it instantly changes, just as you'd expect Excel to. So we've got the auto calculate here. In the last release, we actually changed it so that you can actually change this. So if at the moment this is auto calculating, but you can see I can't change it. It's locked. It's stopping me from changing it. If I hover over here, I can take the 1 away if I want to, but this is auto calculate, so it's locked. You can actually now apply a button to this in the properties that lets you manually change it if you want to. So if you don't want this to be auto calculated and you want to override it, you now can do that if you want to. So it's a really nice feature. The reason Germany and Italy are green is because you can enter numbers in there, and we've applied some formatting just to make it obvious. It's green because we want you to put the numbers in. The reason Finland and France are grey and you can't enter anything in is because when you hit this tick box, we've applied some logic that says lock these values. Again, really nice. It's like you do it, you lock it, it's saved, it's locked down. All right. So that's one thing that you can do. What you can also do with planning, let's say you want to take lots of information from a spreadsheet, because we know full well that lots of finance people and people do this kind of work. They want to work in spreadsheets, but then maybe upload it into here. So what we can do is you can actually export this information to Excel or import and copy and paste directly from Excel. So let me show you how this works real quick, because this is quite a nice feature. Let's export all of the values in this table here out to Excel. Okay, so we're going to do this. We'll open the file. Did I click on that? Maybe I didn't. Let's try that again. There we are. So we'll enable editing, and then we're going to change the values in here. So we're going to look at the product dumbbells in Finland, and what we think is we expect, say, a 10% growth. All right, so we'll do equals January, and we're going to multiply that by 1.1. All right. And then what we'll do is we'll take that and we'll drag that along. So that's applying the 10% growth to all of them. Okay. So that didn't work quite well. I see what he's done. He's done 10% growth on 500, then 502. He's kind of done it. Okay, whatever. You get the idea. Let's do Control C. Then we'll jump back to here, and then we'll go to this January field just there and do Control V. And it actually pastes in the things that we've applied. All right, if I hit save, that's now saved and done. So I could have done all of the columns and all of the rows in one go, and it would have worked just as well. All right, so there's this nice copy paste feature between Excel and Infinity Forms. There are other things I could do. I could say, actually, I want everything in January to be a fixed value, say 2000. We do that, and then we hit update, and everything will update in that column based on what you've done. We could also do something like pre-fill the data based on a set of rules. So you get this pop-up that says, I want all of the values into all of the cells to be this number, but I want to apply a growth percentage or a growth coefficient. So you could say, let's do that by, say, 14%, hit pre-fill, and it will pre-fill all of it. I won't do that because it can just take a minute. It's got lots of data in here. But that will basically pre-fill everything in accordance with a set of rules. So there's some really nice things you can do. That doesn't answer the question that you asked me, actually, about doing aggregation and distribution in hierarchies. And I know this is a really important point. So let's just zoom across to this little video that I've got here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have this demo. This was built by one of my colleagues. But this demo here, I'm just going to go full screen. What this shows is a hierarchy. Now, this is really important because whenever you're doing planning, you're doing sales planning, often you want to be able to plan for an entire category of products or even an individual product, right? So what we've got here is four categories. There's like 4 levels in our categories. So we've got bath and bedroom products. There's the bath category, accessories, and then the individual products themselves, right? So what we'll do is we'll just run this video. Actually, let me just step back slightly, just go back here. And what you'll see is we can start to enter in some numbers or copy and paste from Excel and paste them in. Okay, so I'm just going to stop there. So my colleague dropped those numbers in from Excel to be able to say, right, we've got the quantity, we've got the price, and then auto calculate that to give me the total of quantity times price, right? So we're working these out at the product level. As we continue to go through, when we recalculate, then you'll start to see them calculating up at the category levels, right? So let that run for a moment. There. So what you've now got is it's valued 900, 1,000 and 200 to give us 2,100. It's then applied the values below to give us 3,400. So what that's doing is it's actually aggregating up. So it's taking the numbers from below and aggregating them up. And you might be thinking, well, what's it using to do that proportions? What it will do is use the 2023 values to determine what proportions were taken up by different products and different categories. We use those proportions from prior years to apply to this year. Now, that's quite a nice way to be able to do it, but you could, if you wanted to, jump forward to this, where you make changes at different levels of the hierarchy and distribute down and up, right? So you go to the top level and lower down. You can do that too. Now, to be really transparent with you, right, what's happening here is we've done some very clever logic in the Qlik load script using Qlik's ability to do brilliant mathematics and the load script to do some really interesting things. But what we've decided to do is create a fifth extension for Infinity Forms, which will be coming out in May, called Infinity Forms Planning. And we're going to bake these capabilities into the product. So you'll be able to define hierarchies, proportions, how you want to do the splits, and so on and so on. So we're going to build that into the product to make planning much easier from May onwards. All right. So very long-winded answer. Sorry, it took a while to explain, but hopefully that gives you some idea of what we can do.
No, it's very good. Very good. I'm conscious of time, Simon.
Yeah.
Have you got more functions to
show us?
No,
those were the main points to show. I'm just wondering if you've got any more questions coming from our lovely audience.
So I'm trying to look down the ones that I got sent before. I think we've answered them all, actually. The main one was, I got asked by 2 or 3 people, is it SaaS and client managed? But you've already answered that one. Yeah, there
are 1 or 2 very subtle differences between the SaaS and the client managed version. So when you actually you can't, at this moment today, you can't upload files into the Qlik Cloud version. That's coming later this year. That's on our roadmap. On the on-prem version, yes. The Qlik Cloud version, not yet, but it's coming. When you actually write data back to the full SaaS version, you do write back to somewhere that Infinity manages for you. All right. So if you go into the Infinity universe and you go into this area called Infinity Forms SaaS, this is where you actually create the data instance. So behind every form, you create an individual file. Okay. You create those files in here. These will be XML files. And then what you do is you use this unique key, ID key, to link the back-end file with the front-end form. So the default setting is that you save this data to an environment that we manage for you. If you don't want to, and some of our customers don't want that to be written into a place that we manage, then you have that hybrid deployment I mentioned earlier, where you can actually do a hybrid deployment where you can actually write back to somewhere that you want to. We also have client managed where you can actually write directly to SQL databases, but not every one of them, a select few that you can write to. So we do have a direct link, for example, to Microsoft SQL Server on Azure Synapse, Snowflake, and so on. Okay, so that's not a hybrid deployment, that's a direct write, but it is again client managed. So you've got some nice options there. So yeah, but we can write back to data either on-prem or working on Qlik Cloud.
Yeah, no problem. And then another question I've got from Andy, of course. Sorry, not our Andy, one of our customer Andys who always asks this question. How much?
How much? Great question. Okay. It's in the UK, it's the list price is £108 per user per year. So that is 100. So that's, sorry, Neil, say again.
Is there a minimum number of users that you have to?
Yeah, good point. So there's a minimum number of 10. So just to get started, it's what's that? £1,080 for 10 users.
Yeah.
But it's licensed on an annual subscription basis. The 108 is actually between 0 and 50 users. When you get to 51 to 100, that price drops. So just like Qlik have a tiered pricing model, we have a tiered pricing model as well. So it goes, when you get into the realms of 100 to 250, 250 to 500, that price point really starts to come down. So the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. Being friendly and flexible, we're very happy to discuss individual prices for customers. So, for example, if you got a really good discount from Qlik, we're happy to discuss how we fit into that for you. So yeah, we're always happy to talk and discuss. So yes, we have a tiered pricing model, but we're also very flexible around pricing too. So happy to do that.
Do you have to buy a user for everybody in the Qlik?
No. No,
right, okay,
great point.
okay.
So yeah, if you've got say 50 Qlik licenses and you only want 10 Infinity licenses, absolutely fine, no problem at all. So
right.
yep, you don't need a license for every Qlik license, which is fine.
Yeah.
Then what you can then do is we also support Qlik's analyzer capacity licensing model too. Now the difference is Qlik can measure time. I think they measure it in blocks of 6 minutes, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
We actually can't do that, but what we do is if a customer can say to us, I can give you evidence that we have analyzer capacity, then we'll give them that license type. And what we essentially do is give you packs of 10 users. You buy them in packs of 10, but they're heavily discounted. So, but it's kind of like a fudged way of meeting an analyzer capacity license model. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have any more questions. I don't know if anybody else does, or any of my colleagues want to jump in. Nope. Okay, so
Alex, if Alex can just come off mute just for a second. I know, Alex, you've been working with some of your customers recently. It'd be great just from your experience. How have you found it? Because as a partner, you guys only came on board with us in June or July, and absolutely unbelievable. You were our best partner last year. You sold to so many of your customers. It was crazy. So you've had some great experience as well, right?
we've had just to cut Alex off before he jumps in there, in case we've dropped him in at the deep end. Right, I'm going to drop somebody else in at the deep end. So Ryan's on the call as well, who did some of the work with some of the customers. Ryan, do you want to jump in and say a few words?
Hello, yes, I am here. Hold on, let me see if I can find the old camera button. Yeah, no, I've done a couple of projects. One of which being at the Angular Ruskin Uni. Sort of got some of their Infinity template bits up and running, and sort of doing their timetabling, which has been quite interesting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, been a very, very good little project. Start to get that underway. So yeah, no, that's sort of the first major one I did. Plus, I've been dabbling with all sorts of odd little bits you can do with it in the background, like section access and managing all these other bits you can do to sort of really control sort of your Qlik dashboards, and doing all these extra little bits and experimenting with the pop-out boxes, which have been very interesting, I must say. They're very, very handy, very flexible. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say you're a fan.
I am a fan. Yeah, I am a big fan of it. I must admit, I really like the product. So yeah.
That's
great. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Without naming any names, without naming customers, I think one of your customers also does a really nice thing where they actually used to have lots of Excel spreadsheets. I think they said it was more than 100 or something, and they used those spreadsheets to augment data that came in from a data source, a source system, and they would use those Excel spreadsheets to help them build certain apps to do certain things, right? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they wanted to then move those spreadsheets into Snowflake, but they needed a tool that would let them enter data into those tables in Snowflake. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, they used Infinity to actually help them see those tables and update those tables in Snowflake. Is that right?
Yeah, so they were. So yeah, I can jump in there. Sorry, my camera's not working today for some reason, but
no worries,
you'll have to manage without seeing my face. So yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So initially thought we'd do lots of copying and pasting into an Infinity form, but that, I think we can all be aware that that's not the most scalable thing. So there's been some pre-processing, but the main thing there is they wanted the business units to be able to review that data and kind of check that it was correct before it then flowed all the way through into Snowflake. And when went through and then was part of their reporting solution.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is something that one of our colleagues who is on the call at the moment has been working on
Oh,
for
cool.
the last little while. And yeah, what I've really enjoyed about Infinity is how easy it is to deploy, because not all of the add-ons for Qlik Sense, or even Qlik Sense to some itself are always that easy to deploy. But Infinity is really quick to get started with, especially if you're in SaaS. You sign up for a demo account, you install your extensions, and away you go. And that's really, really good for showing that value really early without having to have a massive in-depth implementation plan and so on. But then it also expands from there. So as you've mentioned there, that customer is using a Snowflake backend that does work in the SaaS environment without needing like extra on-prem components and all sorts of things like that. Some of the other data sources, I know you do need some extra kind of back-end components in place, and so it can kind of scale out and kind of be an enterprise solution whilst also being really quick to deploy. And that, for me, as someone that gets involved in evaluating products for Ometis to offer, is a really valuable thing.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Alex. That's really good to know. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. All right, well, I guess it comes back to me to say next steps. So we have recorded this session. I'll be sending out the recording a little later this week, and I'll also put a survey on there. So please, let us know where we can improve, or things that you thought were good, so that we can fine tune these sessions for future ones. Do get in touch if you want to know more about Ometis, and obviously Infinity as well. I'll put links into the email that I send out. Read our blog posts, lots of stuff on there that I hope you'll find useful. All of our previous webinars are on our YouTube channel. And then let us know of other topics you'd like us to cover. So we've got 3 coming up that have come out of this, actually, where people have asked us to cover sentiment analysis again, which we've done previously, but it's obviously improved as Qlik has developed the platform. We're going to talk about the layout container, which is reasonably new piece of functionality, and then somebody's asked to go back around the geo-analytics and what you can show within that. Yeah, I've got it in the wrong order there, but lastly, please follow us on LinkedIn, because that's where we put most of our announcements, so you can keep on top of what we're doing if you follow Ometis on there. But other than that, I'd like to thank Simon very much for joining us. Been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Neil.
And thank you all for attending as well. I hope you found it useful, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.